What's up guys, Josh from Strength Side. This is my current stretching routine. Truth be told, I'm a super stiff person. All the mobility gains that I've made have come very hard. I've had to put a lot of effort into unlocking new ranges of motion in my body. My process has been to use a combination of the stretching routine that you're about to see in this video with loaded stretches that involve strengthening that stretched position more. If you are a super stiff person like myself, I'd recommend doing the same. Use a combination of the routines that you see on my channel with more loaded stretches that are strengthening those stretched positions. And also know that it takes some time. The secret is being consistent and being frequent and persisting even when you don't see the results that you think you should. So this routine is aimed at opening up the hips along with some spinal extension and rotation. Pop it on and get into it. And the first stretch, we're actually just gonna start in a seated position like so. Now this stretch I learned from Kit Laughlin, and it's a stretch for the rotators, the piriformis. What you're gonna do, and I'll link to Kit Laughlin's video in the description, so if you want to see him just showing this stretch probably better than I do, then you can check that out. So you're gonna start in this position, one leg down, crossed, and then we're going to cross this leg over the top like so, okay? So if this is already like, you're like, I can't get into this position, what I'm gonna have you do is a regressed position where you keep this leg straight, cross this leg over, cross this arm over this leg, and then push the elbow into the back of the knee so my knee is going up into this armpit, okay? You could gently rotate the torso. That's the regressed version if you can't do this. So we start here, I cross like so. Now it's very important that this hip is staying down on the ground, okay? So I'm not just shifting all my weight into the hip that's not being stretched. I wanna keep this hip, the hip bone, driving down into the ground. So I hook my arm right into the elbow here, right? And I pull this knee towards my armpit here, okay? While I'm putting this hip down into the ground, okay? So we're gonna start the timer here, 1 minute. Now try to relax this hip that's being stretched here. Let it, every time you exhale, let it sit down to the ground there. Now the other thing that Kit talks about in his video is trying to lift the rib cage along this leg here, okay? So don't let yourself get rounded forward. We're actually trying to straighten the spine. And if you're able to find that straightening of the spine and dropping the hip, you'll feel a really good stretch in the rotators of the hip there. I find that doing some rotation first in the scheme of stretching things leads to other things actually opening up as well. So I like to start with stretching out the rotators and the glutes a bit before I do some of the other stuff. Okay, that's a minute. We're gonna switch to the other side. So I'm gonna now tuck my right leg here. This left leg comes over. I'm gonna grab here, hook into the arm, drop my left hip down. I'm gonna start the timer. And now I'm pulling this knee to my opposite armpit while I'm trying to let this hip drop and relax, and I'm straightening out my spine. Breathe. On most things, I'm a bit more inflexible on my right side, my right hip. So I usually start with that side. And the reason I mention that is because on this side, I definitely feel like I'm able to really get in that hip a bit more. And I feel a big stretch on this side. I recommend trying to breathe through the nose on some of these, in and out. Okay, that's a minute. So this next one is called the Bretzel. This is going to be stretching some of the front of the hip, that quad area, along with getting some thoracic rotation. Really enjoy this one. So the way we're gonna start is in a little side lying position here. I'm gonna grab the ankle of this bottom leg like so, okay? Now this knee is gonna stay up at 90 at the hip right here. Now I'm gonna pull my heel to my butt, and then I'm gonna gradually let this right shoulder fall down to the ground. Okay, so we're really twisting ourselves up here. I'm gonna start the timer, a minute. I'm trying to keep this left knee, or I'm sorry, the right knee down as well. This can be pretty intense. Right now I'm feeling a big stretch in my left quad, and I'm feeling some stretching in my right thoracic region, the lat, probably some of the deeper spinal muscles as well. Try to relax into this. You can squeeze the left butt, left glute a bit to give you a little bit more hip extension on that right side. And if you can touch your right knee and your right shoulder down, you're getting some pretty good range of motion there. So let's do this next side. I'm gonna do it facing away from you so you can see this other side here. Let me start a minute. Pulling that up. Breathe. Hopefully I have some relaxing music going in the background for you guys that are following along with me. And this side is definitely a bit more stiff. My left shoulder does not quite get down to the ground on this side. But this stretch feels really great. And when you stand up after this stretch, you feel like your spine's really open and straightened out a bit. Good, and the last thing I want to mention is this one you do want to be pretty active, so I'm actively pulling the shoulder down, actively pushing my hip forward, squeezing the glutes, not just relaxing. Okay, now after that, we're gonna hop into stretching the hamstring a bit. So we're gonna come up on the knees here, and I'm gonna get into one leg kneeling, one leg out like so, straight. We're gonna go all the way locked out at the knee here. If you wanna put a little cushion under your knee, if you don't have super strong knees like me, that's fine. And from here, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna start the timer. I want you to try to extend and arch the lower back, and then pull your chest down towards the knee, just like so. Trying to keep as much arch in that lower back as you can. And we're gonna do that for the first 30 seconds. And then the next 30 seconds, we're gonna go ahead and round the back and just get as deep into it as we can without worrying about spinal flexion, okay? So I'm here, I'm also pulling my toes back so we can capture some of this calf stuff as well. Okay, that's 30, so now I'm gonna round the spine. I'm gonna grab my foot. For me, I can get my nose down to my knee. You might not be there, that's totally fine, but we're just rounding over. I'm trying to kind of smush my thigh to my left part of my stomach here.
I'm pulling my toes back as well to capture that quad.
Boom, 1 minute. Let's switch. I just realized that the audio might be a little muffled there because I'm all scrunched down here talking. So, sorry for that. We'll start our minute. We're first arching the back, pulling that knee and chest together, pulling my toes back a little bit here. Not a little bit, all the way. And it doesn't matter if my foot is flat or like that. Either one's fine. I'd say work on what you need to work on. I kind of need to work on this one here. And that's 30 seconds. Now I'm gonna pull myself down, nose to knee, if you can get that.
Breathe, relax into this one. For me, I'm kind of trying to get my butt to relax here. Get that whole backside softening here.
Yes. All right. 1 minute. So we'll just pause here for 1 second. I do want to say we're holding for 1 minute in most of these, but honestly, for a lot of these, you'll get probably more out of them if you're holding for something around 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So if you feel like something is good and needs more, go longer. Next one, we're gonna do what I just call a deep hip flexor stretch. So I'm gonna get into this position here, right? You can kind of start in a half kneeling if that's easy for you. And then from here, I'm just gonna lift on my toes and I'm gonna push this knee back as much as I can. I like to flip my toes around here so my top of my foot's on the ground. I'm gonna start the minute. And now from here, I'm simply just pressing my right hip down into the ground. I'm kind of moving forward at this diagonal vector, trying to bring my right hip to my left heel almost. I'm also kind of reaching the left hip forward, and it's almost like the two leg bones are going in the opposite directions. One's moving forward, one is moving backwards. Now, one thing that we can also do here is just kind of rotate toward this leg that's forward, and that's going to open up some tissue to maybe even get a little bit deeper into this stretch. And you should just be feeling this in the front of the hip and that hip flexor. You can also squeeze the glute. This is a very nice one, especially if you get stiff in the front of the hip like most of us do. Let's do the other side. 1 minute on the timer. Just kind of adjusting here, getting that left hip moving forward. Getting the right knee moving forward as well. It's been about half time. I'm gonna rotate this way a bit. Cool, very cool. Ease yourself out of that one. Ooh, those front of the hips should feel a little bit more open there. You can maybe squeeze your butt a little bit better after that. Now, we're gonna move into 90-90 position here. 90-90 4 position. So for this, we're gonna do a pigeon, leaning forward here. I'm gonna have you keep this at about 90, right? Actually, not about 90, right at 90. It's gonna give you the best results for stretching this front hip, okay? I'm gonna start the timer. We're gonna come down and we're gonna bring that chest down towards the mid shin to ankle area here, okay? And it starts. Now try to relax this front hip as we sink down. Try not to round the back too much here. Keep a straight spine. You might get a little rounding, that's okay. Breathe. This is a tough position, this 90-90, so if you need a cushion under this hip, then prop yourself up a bit if this is just not even possible to get to. Okay, let's go ahead and switch to the other side. Ooh, I should have been doing my right first, but I switched to the left there. That's okay. Now we get this right side going. I have a video showing this one as well as an elevated pigeon stretch. I'll throw a link on the screen where I kind of dive a little bit deeper into this. If you find that this helps, which it most likely will, and this will help you work towards more of the full pigeon stretch where we get this leg back straight. Which feels really good when you can find this stretch. Nice, if you can do it right now, you can explore that a bit. But if we're keeping this knee at 90, this stretch becomes much more difficult for most people. We can really help loosen these glutes and rotators up. Guys, that is it for the formal stretching. Let's sit in the squat here for a minute at the end. I always like to sit in the squat after I do any type of stretching just to kind of reinforce this position. This is always a good position to hang out in and actually use some of that hip flexibility that we just gained from doing all this, right? As well as some spinal thoracic mobility as well. See how your squat feels. If you need to elevate the heels a bit, that's totally fine. If you need to hold on to something, that's totally fine. But one thing I've been actively paying attention to lately is trying to keep those arches in my feet while I'm in the squat position and trying to let the hips relax a bit and let those rotators and glutes just kind of drop down and release some tension to get a nice deep squat position. All right, that's a minute. Guys, hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully you feel pretty loose right now, like I do. I'm actually about to go hop in the car for a little mini road trip, and that's why I wanted to do this, to kind of loosen up before I do that. I'd recommend doing something like this, or doing this exact thing. Turn this video on, jam out with me about 3 to 4 days a week. I mean, you could go more than that for sure, but as a minimum effective dose, probably 3 to 4 times. And then just look for little improvements each time that you do it, right? You should be seeing subtle improvements in your range of motion, if not your range of motion, just the feeling, right? Things feel a little bit more comfortable or better. All those things are good trackers in moving forward. Let me know which stretches you liked and which stretches you might want me to dive into depth a little bit more on. Comment below. If you like this video, appreciate the thumbs up, appreciate you. You can follow me on Instagram if you want to see what I'm up to on the day-to-day. It's at #town. As always, I'll see you in the next one.